Testing. One, one. Okay, here we are. Back in the saddle again. We are finishing up Holy Play tonight and ready to move on. So we're in the final chapter of chapter 10 of Holy Play. Um, I want to open up with the title. Well, open up with a word of prayer. Amen. God, we thank you for this night. We thank you for these who have gathered. And we thank you for the gift of technology. We thank you, dear God, for the gift of this book. Thank you for the author and the work that he laboriously labored to bring it to fruition. And so now we pray for the insights that only you can guide through your wisdom. In Jesus' name we pray. Amen. Okay. So we're in the final chapter, chapter 10 of Holy Play. And there is a opening that Dr. Jones lifts up. He says, it's in the form of a meditation or a poem. He says, your soul is working in tandem with God to inspire curiosity and insight, imagination about new possibilities. On page 139, he says, a dynamic duo. He says, since the initial release of Holy Play 15 years ago, it says, I have become an avid explorer of my soul. He says, I looked forward to writing this new chapter because I was interested in how a reality that means so much to me now informs beliefs that remain dear to me after many years. He says, I wondered, what does soul have to do with Holy Play? As I set out to write this chapter, the idea at the top of the page entered my mind easy and without provocation. Again, he says, your soul is working in tandem with God to inspire curiosity and insight, imagination about new possibilities. Says, whatever speculations I raise in the next sentences and paragraphs, this I know to be true. Holy Play and soul are rooted in divinity. The same spiritual deepening I felt in my exploration of Holy Play is the same sacred deepening I feel in my exploration of soul. An alert aliveness is one way to describe both experiences. To have such unusual, potent energy in common suggests there are specific ways that soul and Holy Play engage and inform each other. It is to this dynamic duo of an engagement we now turn. And so, as you see, this chapter deals with our souls. It is extremely apparent that our souls are essential in our well-being. It is also painfully apparent that most of us don't understand and don't know how to tend to the soul. We just assume somehow that the soul will mend and fix and grow itself, and not understanding the connection that our soul has to our very well-being and our ability to understand purpose in our life. When the scriptures in Genesis point out that God scooped up dirt, formulated it into a human, it says that God blew the breath, God's breath, into the nostrils of the flesh. And we became living souls. And so I like to say that God donated divinity to dust. Our souls are divine. So in this, his final chapter of the book, I think it's important, and I pray that we have taken the time to read. It is always kind of challenging because I wonder how many people are reading. I know we have things to do. I know we have TV to watch. I know we have other affairs to tend to. But this book here is one of the best books you'll ever read in your life. But again, sometimes, it's not the right time for some people, so we'll see. I do want to add a opening. I want to open with a quote from Howard Thurman, because as we talk about soul, I want to lift up this quote from Howard Thurman. He says, "There is in every person an inward sea, and in that sea there is an island, and on that island there is an altar, and standing guard before that altar is the angel with the flaming sword. Nothing can get by that angel to be placed upon that altar unless it has the mark of your inner authority." He says, nothing passes the angel with the flaming sword to be placed upon your altar unless it be a part of the fluid area of your consent. This is your crucial link with the eternal. Let me say that. Let me say that again. You may not want to hear me say it, but I want to hear myself say it again because it is so powerful. Howard Thurman says, "There is in every person an inward sea, and in that sea there is an island, and on that island there is an altar, and standing guard before that altar is the angel with the flaming sword. Nothing can get by that angel to be placed upon that altar unless it has the mark of your inner authority. Nothing passes the angel with the flaming sword to be placed upon your altar unless it be a part of the fluid area of your consent. This is your crucial link with the eternal. Um, I believe Howard Thurman is talking about the soul. And that soul is how crucial it is to our very existence, our thoughts, our mindsets, our ability to create, to be, to be thoughtful in generating ideas, and not just ideas, but visions. And so, Kurt Byron Jones says, "What is soul?" It's a very good question. We could go a number of discussions about what is soul, and here it is. What's the difference between soul and spirit, or are there a difference? He says, what is soul? How do you define soul? Consider stopping your reading for a moment and write out some thoughts and ideas that come to mind when you imagine soul. He says, my own understanding of soul came one morning after being aroused from my sleep. He says, this is what I heard and wrote down on a pad I kept beside my bed. I want to say it's important to have a notepad next to your bed at night, because oftentimes there are some very creative and imaginative thoughts that run through your mind, and if you don't stop intentionally to write them down, they will dissipate like vapors. And so then you'll be trying to remember them the rest of the day. You got to write it down. And so he says this thought came to him. It said, though your soul may be more mystery to you than familiar reality, you are not a stranger to soul moments. When you smile for no reason, know something for sure without having learned it, or feel peace amid broken pieces, your soul is manifesting itself. Your soul is your hidden reservoir of limitless wisdom, peace, and joy. Your best guide for setting priorities and living at a sustainable pace is your soul. Your soul is the part of you God held last just before releasing your free flight into the world. The last thing God implanted before God sent you from the realm of the unknown into the known, God put soul in you. And so it's very powerful to begin to ponder these things. And I know that we have, a lot of obligations that claim the attention of our minds. We're constantly always trying to think ahead, trying to figure things out ahead of time, trying to wrestle with different issues that we know we're going to face, or we're trying to anticipate what we may have to encounter. And so we are cluttered in the mind with so many things that we're trying to work out that we don't have the time to just ponder, as Dr. Jones points out. Okay, what is my soul saying today? And so he says, since hearing those words several years ago, I have sought to intentionally heighten soul awareness and harness soul power. Why on earth would I not? Something so meaningful has to matter when it comes to living satisfaction and fulfillment. And so then I'm on page 141. He says, being fully present. So we have all felt them, either our own partial presence or someone else's. The latter is particularly off-putting. You are having a conversation and suddenly the other person's eyes drift off somewhere else. it is clear that you are no longer the recipient of their full attention if you ever were in the first place. Now, stop right there. And I'm sure all of us have had that experience where you're talking with someone and you can see in their eye, you can see that there is something behind the eyes that's a part of the mind that has drifted to some other place, some other location that is not physical, but the location is imagination, is mental. It is pondering something else while they are facing you and probably even nodding at times or not, but you can see a vacant look as if the person has left the room. The OJ said, your body's here with me, but your mind is on the other side of town, and you are messing me around. And so here again is an example of not being fully present. It happens in classrooms where students sit and oftentimes, depending on what class it is or depending on the charismatic nature of the professor, they tend to drift off to another place. And what is fascinating about it, it is both good and bad. It is bad, it is difficult for the person that is trying to have a conversation with you to see you drift off somewhere and they're trying to say something to you. And then when they get through saying it, they say, are you listening to me? And you say, what? Yeah, I heard everything you said. Then what was the last thing I just said? Well, I mean, you said something about blah, blah, blah. And you see, you can tell then, yeah, you weren't listening to me. You were drifting off somewhere else, engaging in, some other thoughts somewhere else. You weren't listening to me, and I was trying to share something extremely important. We all have experienced it. Now, that's the downside of it. Here's the upshot of it, that the person is actually mentally allowing themselves to travel. Now, unfortunately, many times it may be on a problem or upcoming issue that they're trying to think about, but sometimes it is the fanciful way of, we call it daydreaming. And there may be something creative that is going on that has caused them to drift. Now, that's the upshot when it is like that. There have been moments in my own life. They haven't happened as frequently as they used to. But I could be in a crowd of people where we're in a room or whatever, just chilling. Everybody's chilling and talking about sports or whatever. And for some reason, my mind goes somewhere else, and I'm dreaming, I'm visioning, I'm having some thoughts of something that is splendid, spectacular. It's alluring, and I'm locked there. And I've had persons to say, "Where did you just go?" And it's always hard to explain. I'll say, some other thoughts just came up, but really I was drifting into a very nice place. And I've heard persons say, "John, where did you just go? Because you weren't here." And for me, it's a superpower, right? Because I know I'm connecting with something that is not seen. I'm connecting with the Spirit of God that is, for whatever reason, has manifested itself in a way to pull me away in what some might call stargazing or daydreaming, but it is a spectacular place to be that I cannot explain. The Apostle Paul says he was lifted up to the third heaven, and he heard things so unimaginable, but also inexpressible with the human tongue. And so that is one of the biblical examples that I want to share with you. And so on the one end, having somebody drift away means they are not fully present. On the other end, it depends on where they drifted to, whether it was at least worth getting the other person upset because you weren't paying attention, Because if it was just on problems or something you're trying to work out, then, it really didn't benefit. It just upset the person that you're supposed to have been in communication with. And so he says, it is clear that you are no longer the recipient of their full attention if ever if you were ever in the first place. He said, the former happens often during the day, encouraged by a culture that encourages the rewards and rewards multitasking. We believe we can live well doing multiple things at the same time. Dividing our attention becomes a way of life. The divided, partially present self is the sad result. Again, so for those who you are talking with who actualities are trying to be nice, but in reality, they want to be working on some other issue that has been dogging them. And so in their attempt to be nice, they stand before you or sit before you and they face you, but then you notice they go somewhere in their mind and they've gone to that place that is really troubling them, that they're trying to figure out, they're trying to work out. Well, that's called, they're trying to multitask. So they think that they can slip away from you, not physically, but mentally, but also come back and be right in line with what you're saying, and it never worked because we already talked about nobody can multitask efficiently. We have led to believe that we can multitask, but nobody can multitask effectively or efficiently. Something gets left out. And so it is when we are engaging one another and trying to also take our mind to another spot where we only offend the person that we're supposed to be talking to, and we don't do what we set out to do very well. So he says, coming home to your soul makes living partially present to life less desirable. Soul yearns for fullness, is patient, and adores thoroughness. To live soulfully is to fall in love with paying and playing attention at a sacred pace. And so to do this soul work, to tarry, abide, hang out with your soul, to see what your soul has to say, it takes being able to be fully present in the moment. He says, thus the impact of soulfulness on holy play is richer experience with life. The holiest play is not chronically hurried. It makes a sacred habit of taking its time. The holiest play has absorbed as full participants in the moment that is now. It is untarnished by fragmentation and unshaken by the soft depth of the divided mind. You cannot have the television on and you want to meditate to communicate with your soul. You cannot have the radio on and you really have to silence the phone to be able to commune with your own soul. This is part of our issue. We have been conditioned and brainwashed to see busyness as productive. And so if we're not physically doing something, we're always trying to figure out tomorrow or the next step we're going to take or 3 or 4 hours from now. We're always trying to figure these things out in our mind, which means we're not fully present for the moment. And so we miss so much not being fully present in the moment. We miss so much not being fully present in the moment. I told this story years ago. There was a Native American guy who was in New York City with a friend of his, a European American, and they were walking, down one of the busy streets of New York, and they stopped at a stoplight waiting to cross the street. As the cars were going by, the honking, the sound of the trucks barreling by, and all of that filled the air. The Native American said, hold up, before we cross the street. I just heard something. The guy said, what? You heard a horn? I've been hearing horns blowing and cars screeching, tires screeching. He said, no. I heard something more. I heard something. He said, it's over here. He said, and they went, and how they sometime on the street they had these large flower pots, big flower pots. And so he said it's over here. And he went over to the flower pot and he reached in, large flower pot outside, sirens, horns, barreling trucks, all this noise. He reached in, he said, here it is. It was a cricket chirping. The European said, how did you hear a cricket chirping with all the other noise that is going on all around us, blaring? He said, it is important to what you pay attention to, what you put your mind to. The Native American was in tune with nature. The European was in tune with the noise of mechanism. What are you in tune with in your life is the question. What are you more tuned to in your life? As the example of the Native American, he was in tune with nature. And if one is in tune with nature, one is not far from being connected and in tune with one's soul. If you are more in tune with the sounds of mechanism in life, sirens, horns, alarms, beeping of watches, and clanging and opening and closing of doors, if you are more in tune with those things, you will not be in tune with your own soul. What are you in tune with? What are you in tune with? What are you in tune with? He says, holy play, I'm on page 141. Holy play is compromise when we are not wholly present, living soulfully, more totally who we are, increases the prospect for full, unadulterated playfulness. In other words, the scriptural reference here would be still and know that I am God. Grandmama would say, sit down somewhere and shut up. We see grandma and the psalmist were on the same page. Because in other words, you're too busy. When I was in seminary, I was in preaching class, and there was a brother from the continent of Africa. I believe he was from Nigeria. Benjamin, I forget Benjamin's last name. Benjamin preached a sermon. It was a preaching class, and he preached a sermon about random movement, and he talked about the seeing of people engaged in random movement that was not productive. It was random movement and routine. And he pointed out you can tell when somebody is not on random movement because they cut across the grain of everybody else. They look out of place, but they are ones that are headed somewhere. Most of us engage in random movement. Take out the keys for the car, open the car door, get in the car, random movement, turn on the radio and turn the signals on and turn the wheel, and it is random movement. Most of us never even think about it. It's muscle memory and random movement that we are no longer present for, but we just do it, right? This is the life that we can end up sunk in, or the sunken place, right? Random movement, or just the arbitrariness of stuff. Be still and know that I am God. Again, as grandma would say, sit down somewhere and shut up. It's the only way you're going to hear the Holy the soul is holy. And so Dr. Jones on page 142, he says, often during my soul engagement moments, impressions will fill my mind. He says, once I imagined a youngster flying a kite while running free in a wide open space. He said, I was not a kite flyer as a child, and at first felt awkward about the image invading my soul talk moment. But I have learned to stay with these impressions, indeed, to move toward and into them. I did so with the child and the kite, and suddenly I felt I was running free. And then I became the kite in the air. Freedom filled my being. In that ordinary early morning moment, it was as if I was flying free, inspired, and at a full wingspan. Now, I want to say that hearing somebody talk about that seems a bit awkward because we normally don't hear people talk like this. That they were in a moment of soul conversation, and it seems their mind took flight to another spot where there was a child flying a kite, but I've never flown a kite before. And instead of rejecting the vision, rejecting the dream, the moment, and trying to step out of it, I have taught myself to engage in it, and I move in my sacred imagination. I moved toward the child with the kite until I became the child running with the kite, and ultimately I became the kite itself, and I found myself flying freely. What does it symbolize? What does it say to the spirit, the mind, that one was able to allow oneself to lift oneself freely that way through one's mind of seeing a vision, of seeing a moment of soul exploration that took one away? There is a freeness that comes with it. There is a release from the rigors, responsibilities, and the resentments that we have, to help us see capability and possibility that we did not know we had, which is signaling that you are made for more than this. Allowing spiritual imagination to carry us away. We often think, again, we have been taught to put negative connotations on this type of being, so that we say we're wasting time, he's daydreaming, he's navel gazing, when in reality we are becoming more healthy, more whole. He says to be more connected to our souls is to feel the power of inspiration as a way of life. Did you hear that? Inspiration ought to be a way of life. While this does not mean that we will feel on top of the mountain each day, it does mean that we cease believing inspiration to be the exception and more the rule. And that is a big step. That is a major step. To see that inspiration ought to be the rule of the day. That's why you've heard me say that whenever you say, I've seen it all, don't not surprise me what people do, because I've seen it all. Well, you have lowered yourself into the place of dullness. You have turned off the water faucet of imagination. You have plugged up the portal of great expectation, because you ought to be surprised every day. Even what people do, it ought to surprise you, even if it's negative. Oh my God, I would never thought people would have done such and such and such. You ought to be surprised, because God is full of surprises. And we let how this world is training us to not be inspired. Inspiration ought to be the rule and not the exception. To expect sacred energy anytime, anywhere, through anything is to be filled, is to fill life with energy, hope, and possibility. It is to engage each new day with anticipation. What did you anticipate eagerly when you woke up this morning? Those of you on Facebook Live, I see you, Wanda, I see you, Ursula, I see you, Tyron, I see you, Jones, Inez, Mama Inez. What did you wake up anticipating with eagerness today? This ought to be the rule, that every morning we wake up, we ought to have some great anticipation, something that makes us tingle just a little bit that we're going to or possibly experience. And to live soulfully is to live ever alert and attentive to the fact that what is in us is always greater than what is against us. What does the scripture say? Greater is he that is in you than he that is in the world. God blew the breath of life in you. We became living soul. God deposited some divinity in the dust of us. And so that soul right there is, as Howard Thurman says, our crucial link to eternity. Ooh. I'm working hard here, y'all. Y'all not getting it. I'm Mike. I'm dropping atom bombs right up in here. Okay, we don't want to use the destructive stuff. So I'm lifting up stars that have never been discovered in this place right now. You good gracious, good googly muggly. I don't know what happened. How did we get so unawares? I don't know. Woo-wee. So, and those of you Facebook, add something in the chat. There's nothing I'm saying that doesn't cause you to say, well, wait a minute, add something in the chat. But also, he says, it is to be at the ready for thoughts we have never held and actions we have never dared. Be every day, wake up ready for thoughts you ain't never held before. Remember, God is able to do exceeding and abundantly more than we could ever ask or think. God can put some stuff on your mind. So he says here, unleashing the soul power for holy play. He says one way to be more aware of your soul's part in holy play and become more open and receptive to your soul's potent influence is to engage your soul in dialogue. He says the practice I employ is a 7-step exercise I call soul talk. And so the first step, he says, is to be still. That's it. The first thing is to be still. Second thing is to lay burdens down. You gotta mentally put them bags down. Second, he says, listen deeply. Listening deeply is helped by breathing deeply. So I want you to hear this. There's this thing called the 4-7-8 rule. The 4-7-8 rule. 4-7-8 rule is this. Breathe in for 4 seconds. 1, 2, 3, 4. Stop. And then hold it for 7 seconds. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Then breathe out, let it go for 8 seconds. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. So y'all in virtual space and right here, try it with me. Okay, let's breathe in 4 seconds. 2, 3, 4. Hold it 7 seconds. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Release for 8. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Now it was difficult. It was really not possible for me to do it in count. But so you develop your counting and you inhale for 4 seconds, get it down in the belly. Hold it for 7 seconds. Then Let it go easy for 8 seconds while you can tap your finger to be your counsel. You don't have to use your voice. And so he says, be still, lay burdens down, listen deeply. That will help you begin to listen deeply, the breathing part. He says, don't run away. Stay there. Okay? Be honest. Be gentle. Then welcome new truth. Okay? Now he says, you may learn more about this powerful method of soul communication in my book. Here it is, Soul Talk, How to Have the Most Important Conversation of All. You need to get that book. We need to get that book. You need to get that book. The book is Soul Talk, How to Have the Most Important Conversations of All. See, these are ongoing elements and practice. Don't worry, Donna, you're here. That's it. The thing is, you're here. See, the reason I'm dealing with this is because this thing about identity and who I am and what I must do, what is my purpose, is the most essential part of us, because that means we have to do our own soul work. This ain't a situation where we can start blaming others. There are so many people that have a habit of blaming others because they weren't able to do this, they couldn't do that. And there is some truth to some people have put bricks in your way and stuff like that. But the most important piece is, what do you do after you had to deal with somebody that put a stumbling block in your way? You can stay there at the stumbling block complaining and blaming that person, or you can find a way to pick yourself up, to be more in tune with yourself so that you are more aware, first of all, of yourself, which will help you really be aware of other people. I know people that think, well, I know people, I can tell something. You don't even know yourself. You can't tell yourself because you didn't do the work you need to do. We measure in the minor of minding other people's stuff rather than minding our own. We were dealing this with the midday class, and we were dealing with, there are always people who want to get the speck out of somebody else's eye but got a big old log in their eye. And so we don't want to be that way. We want to do soul work by getting the log out of our own eye, tending to our own soul so that we can see more clearly. He says on page 143, you may learn more, again, from reading his book, Soul Talk, but he says, I invite you to visit, and then he puts his website there. Second, he says, a second way to bring more soul to your holy play is to be more alert for spiritual nudges. Spiritual nudges that occur during the day, often happening softly and in still moments. Between our busyness, a spiritual nudge can be a thought, feeling, impression, or impulse that sparks an idea or inspires an action that somehow we know will be for our betterment. I believe such sacred wisdom seeks to connect with us more often than not, but usually we are either too busy or fatigued to notice. Expecting to receive such wisdom will increase the emphasis of it actually happening. With increased occurrences comes heightened levels of living expression and engagement. So spiritual nudges, they oftentimes are subtle, but they are there. They are there. It could be the bending of a branch on a tree as the gentle zephyrs of winds caress them, and it's just some way that God is saying something, or at least God is saying, and you're trying to figure out what God is saying because it's captured your attention. There are so many ways that it happens, right? I was talking with Nate Shannon earlier this week, a couple days ago, and we were talking about this thing because he does gardening and growing, and so we were talking about how certain plants we humans have labeled weeds, and this really is European stuff. That what we call weeds are actually things God made, and they're actually beautiful. But we've assigned beauty to some things and ugliness to others. That's European. Again, it's separating different species making one better than the other. What that sound like, right? And so even in what is called the plant world, Europeans' mindset have it, attached to us. So if somebody drives by your house and there are all over your front what other people call weeds, but look beautiful for you, people gonna label you. You don't take care of your yard. You take care of your yard. You trifling. You lazy and all that type of stuff. When in reality, that's how I wanted it to look, right? But we know we'll be out of step then with the rest of the culture. And guess what? Most of us who say, I don't care about what nobody think, well, you do care because you don't want nobody to say, yeah, look at that yard. Pat's yard is trifling. Pat got all these weeds in her yard. We don't want that. But Kurt is saying we got to be more aware to spiritual nudges. And spiritual nudges come through weeds. I did a meditation on be like a weed. And I had to pull that up again. He also says the third way to unleash soul power for holy play is to attend to moments of awakening after evening sleep or daily nap. Now this is good. He says there is a space between being fully asleep and fully awake that is alive with insight beyond our rational thought. Through supra-rational realities such as soul, unconscious mind, and intuition, we always know more than we think. Semi-conscious early awakenings offer a portal for unusual and meaningful insight. Keep a pad near places where you rest and expect to receive knowledge that may go unhidden were it not for your readiness to receive and your soul's readiness to convey. The more you are open to soul wisdom in this way, the more wisdom you will receive. Expectation breeds endowment. Endowment breeds empowerment. So, I mean, this is so significant because there is this space between coming out of sleep and not being fully awake, where if you just pause and let it happen, there's some signals and messages and insight that come through. Frankie Beverly called it the golden time of day. You didn't think I could mix that, huh? I'm telling you, I'm laying some heavy stuff here. This is, man, I don't. I gotta pop my collar. Oh my goodness, cause hey man, cause I don't know if y'all got it. Now see, a year from now, somebody gonna say, "Oh, that's what Rev Jackson was saying." That's too late, man. Right. Yeah, they gonna forgot I'm the one said it and say, "Hey, Rev, it blah blah blah." I'm like, I said that, Negro, a year ago. There, that space, not quite awake and not fully asleep. That's the golden time. So Dr. Jones says, it was during such a sacred awakening moment that I received the following unusually meaningful message. So this is what he got in one of those moments. It says this: the highest calling of all is to be fully present in life. To be fully present in life, we must be more present to our souls. Soulfulness inspires being and becoming who we are deeply, daringly, and with no small joy. Full soul empowering presence in the world with each other is creative, communal, creative, holy play. Now he got that from one of those moments because he had a pad by the bed and a pen and write it down. And so on our phones we have voice notes we can go on, and you can record right into the voice note, right? And so I'm paying on page 144. He says the soul's priceless gift. He says, 2 years ago, I began coaching aspiring authors. This new calling of a labor is indeed holy play to me. I have had few sessions with writers in which I have not felt absorbed and enlivened by mutual seeking, searching, and finding. Not long into my new venture, I realized that I was not just dialoguing with my clients about their writing, but their right to do so. Though most all felt called to write and knew something about the craft of writing, many I discovered struggled with believing in their ability to engage their work with sustained confidence and trust. Though having found their footing on the need to write, they needed support embracing the writing practice day after day with freedom and joy. They needed to give themselves permission to not just do the writing, but to devote themselves to writing, to dance creatively with God. And here's the part where who is in your circle is so important. See, when you don't have in your circle people that are attuned, empaths, these are empath people who are attuned with what you are moving to and moving through so that they can help encourage you to give yourself permission because they don't see it as something strange, freaky, or just out of the way. They see it as something essential. You got to have some people. You know, I ain't saying that everybody in your circle going to be like that, but you got to have one or two people who can then help you display your best self. Oh my goodness, this is essential. And so enter the soul's priceless gift. Enter permission to play our callings with all we have and all we are. You have a sacred right to respond to your holy calling without feeling the need to hold anything back. Education and credentials are supports, but the fire for doing what you are called to do begins and ends in your soul. Your finest inspiration and source of confidence and perseverance derives from that mysterious, wonderful something within your soul. The hymn writer must have felt this when the hymn writer said, something within me that I holdeth the reins, something within me I cannot explain, something within me. All that I know is there's something within me. The hymn writer said that. Such inspiration need not be reapplied for or rekindled over and over again. Creativity may be resisted and restrained by believing you must always wait for inspiration. Concerning this subtle but thoroughly unholy bondage, your soul says, you are God's child. You are inspiration. Rise up and play your inspired purpose in the world. Oh, you are inspiration. You're waiting for the outside to inspire you when you are inspiration. Remain open to your soul, continually urging you on. For several years, I have been intentionally alert and receptive to the guidance of my soul. From time to time, I share soul to self posts on my Facebook pages. Yes to Grace and Soul Talk. Those are his pages. He says, here are 10 such offerings. One of them, he says, I take heart, even when all is overturned and upended. God is still up to something. It's packed with great possibility. He says, number 2, when your soul gives you the green light, go with a smile. Number 3, pause not only to rest, but to catch a new vision. Number 4, you are used to pushing and striving, but there are times when you must let it come to you. Number 5, look to your soul to know what and when to release. Number 6, be open to sudden gust of inner clarity, not just knowing, but knowing for sure. Ooh-wee. Number 7, sometimes it's not a matter of being still, but letting stillness be in you. Oh my God, this is good. Number 8, there is a holy eternal dynamism that you may tap into at any moment. Ooh. Number 9, you have a holy right to feel lavishly blessed. Number 10, to live with closed expectations is to court rigidity. To live with open expectancy is to court wonder. Rabbi Joshua, Reverend Abraham Joshua Heschel has a book entitled, I Ask for Wonder. Have you asked God for wonder? I know you asked God for a lot of stuff, but did you ask God for wonder? You know, the stuff that makes you have an awe moment. It's so spectacular. It is so unimaginable that you have this awe moment. You know, it's like watching the Grand Canyon. You have an awe moment as nature at her most finest and power. The power that frightens you, but you are reverent at it because you recognize it is sacred. Awe moments. Have you asked God for wonder? In other words, you're asking God, blow my mind. These are the things that build creativity. These are the things that build soul connection. And so that is the end, but I want to close with this vital quote from Howard Thurman. Howard Thurman, in this quote, asks this question: are you a reservoir, or are you a canal, or are you a swamp? He says the distinction is literal. The function of a canal is to channel water. It is a device by which water may move from one place to another in an orderly and direct manner. It holds water in a temporary sense only. It holds it in transit from one point to another. The function of the reservoir is to contain, to hold water. It is a large receptacle designed for the purpose, whether it is merely an excavation in the earth or some vessel especially designed. It is a place in which water is stored in order that it may be available when needed. In it, provisions are made for outflow and inflow. A swamp differs from either. A swamp has an inlet but no outlet. Water flows into it, but there is no provision made that makes for water to flow out. The result, the water rots, and many living things die. Often there is a strange and death-like odor that pervades the atmosphere. The water is alive but apt to be rotten. There is life in a swamp, but it is stale. The dominant trend of a man's life may take on the characteristics of a canal, reservoir, or swamp. The important accent is on the dominant trend. There are some lives that seem ever to be channels, canals through which things flow. They are connecting links between other people, movements, purposes. They make the network by which all kinds of communications are possible. They seem to be adept at relating needs to sources of help, friendliness, and to friendlessness to friendliness. Of course, the peddler of gossip is also a canal. If you are a canal, what kind of things do you connect? Or are you a reservoir? Are you a resource which may be drawn upon in times of others' needs and your own as well? Have you developed a method for keeping your inlet and your outlet in good working order so that the cup which you give is never empty? As a reservoir, you are a trustee of all the gifts God has shared with you. You know they are not your own. Are you a swamp? Are you always reaching for more and more, hoarding whatever comes your way as your special belongings? If so, do you wonder why you are friendless? Why the things you touch seem ever to decay? A swamp is a place where living things often sicken and die. The water in the swamp has no outlet. Canal, reservoir, or swamp? Which? Howard Thurman asks. If you are a swamp, holy things don't get through to you. If you are a canal, holy things can, but what do you choose to come through you? As he said, gossip can go through you, and gossip is destructive. We were talking earlier today about how people in the church, in whatever church, should never entertain a person gossiping about another person, gossiping about what they don't like about the other person, gossiping about how they don't feel the other person responds to them. They should never be gossiping, because Matthew 18:15 says, you take that to the person. Don't share it with other people. And other people are to have the courage, the commitment, and the conviction to lovingly say, hey, that's not healthy. That's not Christian. Take it to the person that you're upset with. Don't bring it to me, and you ought not be spreading it in the congregation, right? Because if you want to be a canal, you want to flow some things that help people, that give life to you and others. Or you can be a reservoir where you are the caretaker, and so you have to have enough for you that you then can share with others. So you have to keep the inlet and outlet at a balance so that you always have enough so that you don't drain yourself, but still can be a blessing to others. Or are you a swamp where you're always looking for attention? You're always looking for a pat on the back. You're always looking for people to treat you and pacify you and act like you are the best thing, but you rarely do that to other people. You rarely are giving accolades to other people. You only give them to people that you like, but you don't give them to other people. You are swamp, and you stink. Because swamps stink. Which one are you? Because if you are going to engage your soul, don't cause your soul to become foul. Well, that's it for tonight. We have completed Holy Play. The next book is Let Your Life Speak by Parker Palmer. Now let me say with the outset, Parker Palmer is a European. It's a white guy, Quaker. And so if you have noticed, I try to examine books by and about generally black folk, because we need to understand who we are, right? But I also include books by some whites, not everybody. And not all black folk. There's some stupid black folk that we're not going to entertain here. Now, I'll read some of their stuff for a perfect reason, but I'm not going to entertain with the group's stupid stuff, right? And there are white folks that I will not entertain in the group. I will read their stuff so I can criticize it, critique it, tear it down because of his theology. And so, there are white authors that I'm not going to put upon you to read. John MacArthur is an author I am not going to ask you to read. He writes prolifically. He has a lot of stuff. The evangelicals eat his stuff up. He makes a lot of money with his stuff. They're John MacArthur. I'm not going to have that. Now, you read it at your leisure if that's what you want to do, but your pastor is not going to put that out there as something that we should read. I'm not going to read anything by Robert Jeffries with you all. Now, if you want to read it privately because whatever you think is in it, I am not going to begrudge you of that. You can beat yourself if you want to. You can impose all kinds of harsh theologies on you that you want. That's your business. But as a congregation, I'm responsible for your spiritual development and your biblical literacy. And I'm not going to entertain as a group anything by Robert Jeffries, because not only is he a MAGA person, but he has a warped theology, that's just like I just mentioned, well, John Hagee, or some of the folk you like, Paula White, or or Joyce Myers. I'm not going to entertain, the theological perspectives of people who are evangelical and patriarchal and sexist and white nationalists and all of that. I am not going to entertain that, right? I'm just not going to do that, because it's foul. And it's like it's like trying to eat a bologna sandwich that has spoiled and it has flies all over it. There may be a couple of pieces that the flies didn't get on that's not spoiled, but you got to deal with the whole thing. So, I mean, it's still toxic. I'm just not going to do that. I'm not going to deal, like I say, with the black folk in the evangelical realm. I'm not going to deal with T.D. Jakes stuff. I'm not going to do that. I am not going to do that. Not going to deal with Joel Osteen stuff. I'm not going to deal with any Juanita Bynum stuff. I'm not going to deal with no Cindy Trim stuff. I'm not going to deal with any of these with these folks stuff, because they are in this evangelical cult that sees our faith and the biblical narrative from a very conservative, wrong-minded view. Okay? It is not liberating, it is pacifying. It is not freedom, and it's not justice. It's not Jesus. It is all of these other things. And I'm not going to entertain that. But I will entertain folk who have some type of social justice understanding of this world, and who see that this world and social justice is for everybody. Parker Palmer is one of those. You look at his bio. Parker Palmer has been an activist for black liberation and liberation for all people. Parker Palmer is the real deal. And he has used his time to write prolifically about purpose and the soul. And so that's why, our next book is Let Your Life Speak by Parker J. Palmer. So I hope you got it. Next week we won't meet. I want to give you time to make sure you get the book, because it's important you get the book. It's an amazing book. It's a short book, so it won't take us long to get through it. But what we will get through will be extremely important and insightful, all right? So I just wanted us to see that. So I hope this has been helpful. Glad you could get in, Donna. Good to see you. And then good to see, thank you, Reverend Kim, and thank you, Mama Inez, and Reverend Cheryl Rivera, and Tyron, and Ursula Bailey, and Wanda Roberts. Good to see you all. Jordan, hey, Brother Jerome, good to see you all. Brother Ricky, good to see you. Thank you all for joining in. Again, we won't be on 6 p.m. next Tuesday, because I need you all to get the book. I need you to get the book. Let Your Life Speak. Now, it's on audio. It's on, what is that? Audible version. Audible, that's it. It's on Audible version. So, you riding in the car, you can be reading the book by listening. I have it on Audible, or you can get it physically and read it. But however you get it, please, because it is an extremely and incredible, enlightening book. Again, carrying on with this idea of purpose, but from a little bit of a different perspective, as you see Parker Palmer, some of his journey to how he got to where he is, and then coming to a point where he can now look at, this faith walk and this thing, spirituality and the soul. So that's the next book. And the book by Michael Harriot, Black AF History, that book will probably be a winter book that we'll look at, okay? But right now we want to get through some of these foundational things first. So you have your assignment, and I look forward to seeing you the week after next. So I really appreciate it. Hope it's been helpful, and I hope it been beneficial for you. And so we are going to now, we're going to sign off. And again, I thank you. Dear God, thank you for this night. Thank you for these who gathered. Thank you, dear God, for whatever you are able to communicate through them, through me, an imperfect vessel. And I thank you for the insights that Dr. Kurt Barber Jones is able to share with us. Now bless us in the balance of this evening to be able to have those moments where we're able to ponder in peace and to let our minds wander to give us messages that come from our soul. And we'll be careful to give you the praise, honor, and glory in Jesus' name. Amen.